All right, today at 9:23 p.m., IMPD officers were dispatched to a shots fired run at the location of 34th and Forest Manor. When they arrived, they were directed or ended up in an alley which was off of Forest Manor, just south of 34th Street. Encountered a group of individuals. Once there, the suspect, we believe this time, fired shots at the officers. The officers returned fire. During that exchange, one of our officers was hit. The suspect was also hit. Both were taken to Eskenazi Hospital. The suspect was originally pronounced deceased. However, due to life-saving measures of the EMS and doctors at EMS, he's currently in critical but stable condition here at the hospital. He has been identified as Major Davis Jr., 25 years old. Our officer was also transported to Eskenazi. Officer Perry Renn, 22-year veteran of the Indianapolis Police Department. Despite the best efforts of the doctors here at the hospitals and first responders on the scene, passed away of his injuries. This is a new investigation, still very fresh, it's still ongoing. We don't have much more information about what all exactly occurred on that scene. Right now I'll turn it over to Mayor Ballard.
Thanks, Lieutenant. I've been under the weather the last few days, so I can't speak very loudly. So the first thing we want to do is obviously express the sympathy for the Renn family. This is a very difficult situation to accept, but also want to send our hearts out to the entire IMPD family who are once again having to go through this. It's a terrific group, and they stick together and do great work, obviously. It's hard to imagine what they go through every day, and I hope the citizens of Indianapolis truly appreciate what they do on our behalves. So that's what I wanted to say tonight. There's a lot of sad people tonight, but I want to tell you also the emotion that's out there is anger. Very tired of some of the things that have been happening. Maybe it's time to do something a little bit differently. So a little anger out there right now too, also. But we'll work through this. We'll think logically. But right now, it's time for grieving. We'll send our hearts out to the Renn family, and obviously the entire IMPD family for everything that they've been doing for us. Just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and covering this so well. Thank you. Troy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, the city of Indianapolis lost a member of its team, a person that laid down his life for the citizens that he serves. But I want to make this clear tonight, as for those that are watching and for those reporting, that yes, an officer was attacked tonight, but the city of Indianapolis was attacked tonight. The officer wears a uniform that represents the best that this city has to offer, and our city was attacked tonight. This is the 8th police officer that's been shot in a year and a half. We have lost 2 of those officers. We've had 22 others, we believe, had shots fired upon them. And each night, they put that uniform on and go out and do the work. I do want to thank Superintendent Carter from the State Police, who's here, and his troopers for assisting tonight. Our Sheriff, John Layton, and the deputies. Also Mayor Jessup and Chief Walton from Lawrence, coming together as a family of Indianapolis to help our police department. IMPD officers are on the street. They're working hard, and we're very appreciative of that. This time I want to turn it over to Chief Hyde for remarks. Chief.
Thank you, Director. Good evening. Thank you for being here. Last night we had over 50,000 people downtown who enjoyed fireworks and the opportunity to engage our police officers in a very positive way. Later on that same evening, we had a situation in Broadway where 7 people were shot by an assailant who chose to take matters in their own hand, having bumped into one of our own citizens, and he decided to try to take their life. That same scene, we had 7 victims. We saw officers pull out their trauma kits, put on tourniquets, apply bandages to try to save a life, and calm a scene. That's the work we do as a police department. That's what you pay us to do. But tonight we're here because we lost one. He won't be able to apply a bandage or a tourniquet. He won't be at the next scene. The question becomes, we as a community, what are we going to do about it? We rolled up our sleeves, ladies and gentlemen, and given you a crime plan that talks about everything under the sun, from helping to identifying to reporting out to making a difference. But we have people in our community, folks, who really don't understand that when we talk about the viciousness of the violence in our community, we have persons who, upon the call of a citizen to shots fired run, upon the arrival of police, thought it fitting to welcome us with an assault weapon. That's unacceptable. I don't know about you, but I'm a little concerned about a city where everyone can come, 50,000 strong, have a wonderful time, and certainly within 24 hours have a young man take the life of the very persons who are trying to protect you. We owe it to his family to honor him tonight, to keep them and IMPD in prayers. We all have to roll up our sleeves and send a message to those people who continue to wreak carnage and harm in our community. That you are not, and that's no longer IMPD is not satisfied. You as a community are not satisfied. And you're willing to call and let us know where these people are who continue to wreak havoc and violence in our community. It's not a very good time for us right now because you know why? We just have to ask ourselves a question. Who's going to replace that fine officer? Who's going to be the next one that takes the oath? Who's going to protect him when it comes down to community support? We need you. Thank you. Any questions?
Chief, what can you tell us about Officer Renn?
He didn't run from the scene. He came there with 3 officers responding to the idea of identifying the threat, eliminating that threat. He's a fine, brave officer. His family should be proud of him. We should be proud of him. And we'll honor him as he should be this week.
What can you tell us about Major Davis, sir, the gentleman that shot at him?
Major Davis has major issues, obviously. Where he got off track, we'll probably uncork that and find that. But Major Davis did not have the right to take a fine officer's life this evening.
Is this a person the agencies had run-ins with before? Was he known to officers to be violent?
We're looking at his background and we'll be reporting out, but we'll just say that Major Davis had an assault weapon. That in and of itself says that's a major problem.
Was it an AK-47?
We'll identify the weapon for you, John.
How long did this confrontation last? How violent?
Generally speaking, it doesn't last long. 3 to 5 minutes is generally how most of these things. We'll pinpoint the time, the time of arrival, the direction of shot, the distances, the shots were fired. We'll get all that for you in the days to come.
Any estimate of how many rounds are exchanged?
We'll get that to you as well.
Mr. Riggs, can we ask you a question, sir? You've talked about people having these kinds of weapons, not having them. And you've talked about, you and the mayor have talked about that folks should not be able to shoot at officers with AK-47s and the like. What does this say about the accessibility of these kinds of weapons in the community?
Remember, Raphael, we have been very diligent in talking about weapons and saying that 93% of all of our shootings occur with some type of weapon. Most of those are firearms. And as we look at this, we have to say, did an individual have a right to have a weapon? In most of the cases that we're finding, they did not. We're going to see if this was the case here. Remember, 90% of our homicides this year, the perpetrator, the suspect, had criminal record, and about 40% of those had gun charges. We will find out what this individual's record is tonight and look at it as well. But it is obvious that there's too many illegal guns in the hands of people that are not supposed to have them in our city. And we're going to continue to work on strict, mandatory minimum sentencing for individuals that use a firearm in a violent crime. We think that's important. We think that it would immediately drop our homicide rate. And let's remember, tonight, a police officer was murdered.
Director, what can you say to folks if they've taken a look at what happened in Broad Ripple last night, they've taken a look at what happened at 34th and Forest Manor, and some folks, even cops, are telling me it looks like this town's spinning out of control?
Well, I'll tell you this, I'm proud of Chief Height and the men and women at IMPD. They were in the right places at the right times. Can you imagine if this individual and some of those last night were able to move their violence throughout the city? They responded last night quickly. They took an incident that was horrific. It could have been much worse. Tonight, an officer laid down his life protecting someone else. But one thing that is extremely concerning to me is that of those shooting victims we have, almost 60% refuse to cooperate with the police department that's out risking their life each and every day. In almost every incident that we deal with where there's a loss of life or someone shot, we know that someone has information and they're not sharing with us, or someone could have called us beforehand before the situation got out of hand. It's frustrating for our police officers that are out there laying their lives on the line.
Mr. Mayor, can we ask you a quick question, sir? You said that tonight is one for grieving, and that is definitely appropriate, but you also said that something else has to be done, sir.
Troy talked about something that we've been trying to do is the mandatory minimum sentencing. So much of this are people who have shown that they have no thought about carrying a weapon in the offensive use of a crime. I believe when you do that, you need to go away for a generation. I believe that. And a lot of our, you can look at the stats, and I think you'll see a lot of what has happened in the last few years. Our stats would have gone down if we had those sentences in effect. So that's part of what we'll be going back again, trying to get stronger sentences for people who use guns in the offensive use of a crime.
Mr. Mayor, that's in January when the legislature meets, but now it's July, as you know. Can we wait till January for the legislature to debate this in a budget year? Maybe not, they'll get something done. What do you think needs to happen now before the legislature comes back in January?
Well, I mean, we'll continue the patrols, but the police are in the middle on this. They keep rearresting the same people over and over again. That's what has to stop, and sometimes that may take a while. I was over there, as you know, quite a bit this year, but right now the police will continue to do what they do, but there are other things that we have to look at on the long term, and frankly, I'm just not going to accept the fact that we're going to continue to allow the police to rearrest these people over and over again and then wonder why. I mean, they wonder why the rate is where it is, when it's pretty obvious to the rest of us.
Mr. Mayor, you mentioned doing something differently. Is that what you meant?
That is one of the things. Absolutely.
I mean,
because that is I'm just telling you, this is so obvious. This is so obvious. It's really frustrating. You think it's frustrating to me? How frustrating do you think it is to these guys who are wearing the uniform? It's very frustrating to them because they're doing it every night, and they have to put themselves on the line every night for this, for the same people. It's terrible. Thanks, guys.
We're blessed to have an outstanding medical staff here at Eskenazi, and Dr. Hayward is here. I'd like to thank him for his work in front of Save Officer and fine work at Eskenazi. Doctor, if you don't mind.
Dr. P.Z. Hayward.
I'm extremely concerned about what happened here tonight. Officer Renn was shot and was brought in all attempts to revive and resuscitate him were unsuccessful despite our best efforts, and my heart goes out to the family and his fellow police officers in the city for such a brave officer.
Dr. Hayward, how often are gunshot victims coming into your emergency room on a weekly basis?
Too often. This is gun violence is a public health problem and a social problem that we need to address.
Doc, is it a problem or is it a crisis, considering the number of people that you've seen, the number of officers that we've seen that have been shot at by people?
I've seen gun violence my entire career, and this problem is not going away until we take real steps to address the problem and address its root causes, which is multifactorial, and unless we are willing to be brave and take future steps, we're going to be unsuccessful in curbing this menace to public health.
So from a public health care response, what can be done from public health care that's not a criminal justice response?
I think education. I think understanding how to resolve conflict that does not involve guns, and then addressing the underlying causes that are resulting in the violence, which are the number of guns, illegal guns that are on the streets.
Do you ever see the same victims come back, let's say, twice in 3 months?
We do see the same people come back after violent crime, and we have programs to address that and reduce the recidivism.
Doctor, you yourself look like you're hurt tonight.
I am. Because this is an affront to us and the citizens of Indianapolis, and when someone as brave as Officer Renn loses his life doing his job,